Hello, hello. Hi, Sarah. Thanks for joining us today. We will get promptly started here right at the top of the hour. We have a lot to cover. It always seems like we don't have enough time. So I definitely want to make sure we comfortably get through things and have enough time for any questions that you guys might have at the end of the webinar. All right. Let's go ahead and get started. We have a lot to cover today. So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining me today for our webinar, Knack 101, where we're going to learn the basics of building an app in Knack. So a little bit about me. My name is Renasha. Feel free to call me Ro. I am our onboarding team lead here at Knack. You'll also see joining me Max. He is also a part of our onboarding team as well. If you guys have questions that come up throughout the webinar, feel free. You can drop them right there in the chat section. We also have a Q&A section as well. You can also throw your questions in there. But again, thank you guys for joining me and Max here today for our webinar. So what do we need to think about and what are we to expect here in the webinar today? So the first half of this webinar, we're going to demo a project management tool, a project management app, and then we're going to build out a portion of that app live. So that'll be the first half, and any time that we have left over towards the end of the webinar will be live Q&A. So again, submit your questions here. Mac's is going to be responding to those. Then we'll take a look at those in the Q&A and we'll do our best to demo if live those responses. I know a lot of times if you're building in Knack and you're just getting started, seeing how you do those things, how you build those things in Knack is super useful. So that will be in the second portion of our webinar today. All right, so let's dive into it. We are going to take a look at a project management app. So this is a very simple, basic project management tool where you can log in, managers can log in, see their projects, they can assign tasks, they can see the details about a project, and then we have a flow where our team members can also log in and see tasks that have been assigned to them. With Knack, the flexibility to build out applications based on your specific needs is one of the reasons many people come to us. There's a lot of flexibility within our platform. So what we're looking at here can be customized if you're starting with one of our template apps, or you can start building from scratch. So we're going to log in here as our manager. And as you can see, Knack provides you with login walls or a way to authenticate within your app so that your data is behind a login and it's secure. We're logged in here as the manager and we're able to see a couple things here first for the manager. We're able to see projects that have been assigned to this particular manager, and we're able to see some details here about a particular project. We can add a new project if we want to from here. So a new project. So we have what we call form views within Knack. We can add details and we could set a due date and hit submit, and that will add that new project to our table. So we've got what we call a menu view here, a table view here. The table view then has different field types that are available within Knack to allow you to really make sure the data goes in the way you want it to. So right now we're looking at a couple of text fields, but we've got everything from date fields to equation fields, formula fields, and more. So again, we already saw the form view, but if we wanted to take a look at a particular project, we can now see a single record So we're looking at a single record for this artificial intelligence chatbot that we're looking to build within our project. And we're also able to see the due date and project manager. Again, if you're capturing other information, you can display that here for the single record. But then that next piece of Knack that is super important to share here is Knack is relational. So we can show in this singular view a single project record with all of the tasks that are being assigned to team members related to this project. So you'll see here we have a task table here, and we can add new tasks if we need to. So again, we have a form view. We can set due dates because we have a date field, and we have multiple choice fields and say, hey, I want to assign this to one of my team members. And once that's been assigned, we'll see all of the tasks listed here under our all tasks. So here's that new task. We have a due date of uh, the 10th, which is passed. That's why we didn't see it in our upcoming due dates. But then we're able to look at that list here. And again, these are all tasks that are related to our project here. So again, Knack can do this lovely thing here that you're seeing, which is like filtering this table to give you a tabular menu where you could see upcoming dates, you could see past dates. If we made an error with this one, we can say, hey, let's go back in here and edit this and set this to a future date. And now we've got a future date here, and you see it removes it from there. And again, we're filtering our view, so we're able to see that new task added there. So super slick. The project manager that's logged in here can also take a look at all of the team members within the platform, and they can take a look at each one of these to see what tasks has that team member been assigned. So now we can take a look at Emily here. She's got 2 tasks related to 2 different projects that they are looking at or working on. So this is our simple task project management application. It's very straightforward. We've got a couple tables. We have a couple relationships set up within this this app. So how would you build something like this out where you could have users log in and view data and connect your data? It's pretty straightforward in Knack. So let's take a look at the back end here quickly. This is what we call our builder environment, our building environment. This is where we set up our tables, we set up our users that are going to be logging into the system, like our project managers and our team members. And then this is also where we start to maybe add some records, we add some test data, but this is our design area. This is where we're building out our application. And then you'll see pages is where we start to design those pages that we were just looking at within this tab here. So this is what this app looks like from the back, but I actually want us to start from scratch. So let's start building this app from scratch so you guys get that full experience of how you would start building it within Knack, and further if you are starting with a template app, how you would edit and customize that app. So give me just a moment to pull up a blank app here. If you are new to Knack and you're just trying to get familiar with the different screens, right now we're in the builder. We can click our Knack icon here, the asterisk. We can go to our account dashboard, and you'll see a list of all of your apps. You'll see I have a ton of them in here. You'll see account settings. But I'm going to go to this create new app here, and this is going to allow me to start from scratch. So I'm going to create an app from scratch. So this is going to open up a very blank instance of the Knack app. So it looks definitely different from the previous one that we were just looking at where we had more tables to work with. With this, we have one table that started for us. And so we can continue to build upon this. So let's talk about what we're going to build. We're going to build a project management app. We want to have a table that's going to manage our projects. We also want to relate tasks to that project, and we want to assign those tasks and the project to maybe a project manager and the tasks to our team members. So let's get started. As we get started, we're going to kind of take a tour of the Knack environment so that you guys understand where everything is at, and then also let you know where all our settings are. Knack has a ton of features. It's rich in features, and sometimes they get missed if you don't give yourself that chance to explore. So anytime you see icons like this, or you see the three dots, there's settings there. So it's crucial that you give yourself that chance to kind of explore the platform first. So I want to pause here. If you have any questions, please, 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 as Max is saying, don't hesitate to reach out to us via the chat or the Q&A. We'll be keeping an eye out there, and he'll be responding to any questions that you have. All right, let's get back into it. So we have a table that's already started for us. If we wanted to create a new table, we can certainly start with this plus button here. This will allow us to either start with an import, we can start from scratch, or we can start with a pre-made table. So you can see where you can drag and drop your CSV file here. We can start with a blank table to create a new table. Again, we can use a pre-made table, which is templated tables that are already created for you, or we can start with a Google Sheet. So this is a cool feature if we wanted to link to a Google Doc that we already have created. If you're working in spreadsheets, you can certainly go to your Google Sheet and bring that data into your application. You can actually create your table from that. We are going to exit out of this. We've already got a table already created for us. So one of the things I want to take you guys through is how to update this table and how to add your own fields and update the name of this table and where all the settings are at. So I'm going to go ahead and select this table. And again, I have this drop down icon here. So I'm going to click it. You'll see that you have some options to view settings. You can copy and you can delete the table. I'm going to click into my settings, and this is immediately where I can make a change to this table. So I want this table to be my project table, where I'm capturing all of my project information. So this is my projects table. My display field, this is going to be your lookup field. It'll be important in a moment here. We'll come back to this, but why this is important. But it's like your lookup field. It's the field that displays if you're relating your tables and you want to show a drop-down list or a multiple choice list, so to speak, of all of your projects to then connect it to a task, as an example. So we're going to go ahead and leave everything as is, but here's some settings, more settings to set your sort order in that dropdown. And it's your default sort order for your application. So I'm going to go ahead and update that. So I've updated this to projects. So we've already got one field added. I want to start adding more fields to start capturing more details about the project. So you'll see this option here to add a field. When I add that, my widget opens up here on the left-hand side, and you'll see all of the different field types that I have to get to choose from to add to my application. Right now, we've got a short text field already here that's capturing the name. So this may be our project name. Again, we can edit this if we want. We can click on the dots here to open up the settings. We can actually just click anywhere here in the center, and that's also going to bring open our settings as well. And I can just rename this to say this is my project name. And take note, you've got some settings here that are available to you for this particular field. So if you want to make sure your users complete this field, you can set it to required. If you want to make sure that you're not getting duplicate information, you can set it to unique. You can also set a default value, and then you can also kind of leave yourself an internal note here as to why this field was created. Sometimes that's useful if you've got admin fields that are just specifically for you as the developer or admin, but not necessarily for all your users, but you need to keep track of, hey, why did I add this field here? That would be what the description is. But you'll also see we've got areas where you could set up validation rules. So if you need to make sure, again, further that the data is going in the way that you want, you can create rules here to kind of trigger a message. If someone's entered the information wrong, you don't want them to add any characters, you can definitely set this up with a validation rule. And then you'll also see the conditional rules area. This gets into your if-then type statements with conditions. This is just one way in Knack to do conditional rules, but it's a great way to, again, make sure the data is going in the way you want. So all those are under your individual field settings. And like I said, you can click on the three dots, or you can click right on that field and open up those settings here. So we've updated the name. I'm going to say update that field. And again, we see my project name has been updated here. So I'm going to continue building this out quickly. Maybe I want to grab a paragraph text field to capture the details of the project. Maybe one of the other things that I want to capture is the start date or the due date of the project. I'll do start date. And again, take note of all of these settings here. I won't dive into each field type. I will encourage you to make sure that you give yourself that freedom to explore. If you're just getting started with Knack, feel free to install a template and use that template as a way to explore and get familiar with where things are at. Break it, because then you can just delete it and start all over again. But give yourself that freedom. And not meaning a ton of time, maybe 30 minutes to just dedicate, what's this? Be curious, click on things. So we've got our project name, we've got our details, we've got our start date. We'll definitely want to have a due date for our project. So we can, again, add another field that's going to capture that. And then maybe one other field that we'll add right now at this step is a status field. So we're keeping track of this status. So I'm going to do a quick edit and just update my statuses here. New, keeping it simple here. So I've added my options. I have some options here to set the default. Every new record that goes in, we're just going to set that default value for this field to new. We can sort the options alphabetically, or we can leave them custom, which is the way we entered them in there. You also have options to turn this into checkboxes or make it a multi-select. So if you had multiple status options, then you could let them select more than one. And then you've got the radio button as an option as well. So again, I can dive into it. I'm trying not to, but there's a lot of ways to customize within that. So now we've got the basic structure here, starting to build out this table of projects. We've got the project name, we've got some details, we've got a start and end date, and we've got the status. So I navigate back here, I've got my projects. So another piece of this is tasks. We want to tie tasks to a project. So let's create a table that's going to allow us to do some adding tasks, and then we'll further probably want to assign those tasks to someone on our team. So we're just going to rinse and repeat at this stage. We'll click the plus button. That's going to open up the screen that I showed you earlier. That's going to allow us to choose to either add a table from scratch. We can go with an import. I'm just going to start with a blank table. And again, once this blank table is added, I can go in to my settings here, and this is the same as our settings here. And this is going to be now my tasks table. And the fields that I'm going to want to capture, the data I want to capture for all my tasks, the name of the task. Again, maybe another paragraph field to capture the details. We'll want to do something similar where we have a due date for the task. And I'm just setting my default date to none because I can set it to my current date, which means anytime I pull that form open, it's going to have the current date already populated for you. I'm going to leave it set to none. And then again, we probably want to do another multiple choice field that's going to capture the status of this task. Again, we can say new and complete. Everything looks good. And again, we can set our default option to new. So we've got the basic structure now of our task table. And again, if you have other details that you are wanting to capture with the task, feel free. You can always continue to build out if you need to add an email address, if you need to add a link to capture some information, to link your users to resources. that is available to you as well. So taking a step back and now looking at our tables, we've got our projects table and we have our tasks table. The next element is really pretty crucial to think through within Knack is like, how does all this relate? How do we relate our tables? How do we say this task needs to go with this project? So with how Knack works, we use a feature called connections, which you might see here on the right-hand side. It's also a field that's available to you here in your tables list down here at the bottom. But the connection is in essence a uh, foreign key. It is your lookup field, as I mentioned earlier. So it allows you to create a multiple choice type field or a drop down field that allows you to choose potentially a project to then assign a task to or add the task to. Now, that's at the high level. There's ways on the pages side to automate it. So it just automatically makes the connection. But just for setting up and configuration on this end, we're going to want to add this connection field to say, hey, this task is tied to our projects. One other thing to think about is how do you know where that connection goes and how many do you need? We've got our projects table, which would be in this scenario called it be our parent table. And then we have our tasks table, which is our child table. So if a project can have many tasks, we're going to go into the side of that statement where it's associated with many. And we're going to go into our task table because many tasks, and that's where we're going to actually add that connection field. And again, I can grab it from here. I can also grab from here. And we're going to choose the table we want to connect to. It's going to pre-populate to the first table in our database. Projects is what we want. We want to say, hey, this task is tied to this project. We're going to click next. This is your one-to-many. This is your one-to-many. Each task connects with one project. Each project connects with many tasks. So if this looks good, reads well, everything is true, you're going to leave that. You're not going to make any changes. If you find yourself going, oh, no, this is actually true, then you're in the wrong table. Jump out of this table and go into your other table and set it up. Because 9 times out of 10, the one-to-many is all you need. Now, there are certainly use cases where many-to-many makes sense, and you may need many-to-many, and that is a completely fine use case or example of a time when you might need to do that. So just keep that in mind as you're building things out. One-to-many is going to unlock a lot of features within Knack. Many-to-many is definitely, there are use cases for it. One-to-one is rare and you'll really be limiting what you can do in Knack. So if you have any additional questions about that, you can always reach out to our onboarding team here at Knack, and we're happy to kind of talk through that and give you some tips on how you would potentially configure that if you had some questions around should you do a many-to-many. So one-to-many, boom, I'm going to add this connection, and now I've got my task details that now I can tie to a project, which is wonderful. That's all, that's it. That's all we need. We don't need to, if you're familiar with existing databases and you understand primary keys and foreign keys, you don't need that within Knack. You don't need to create a primary key. You don't need to have your foreign key. Knack connections actually acts like a foreign key. You're just going to that child table, and that's where you're setting up that connection. All right, so we've gone through projects, we've gone through tasks. Let's talk about who needs to log in and have access to our application. And this is where we talk about users and setting up our user roles. This is something you want to definitely think through at the very beginning of your building process. Who needs to have access? And set that up right away. So for example, we've seen in some cases where people might use, hey, I want to set up a table for my team members, and they create their users, they create their team members as a user, they start building it out, they start assigning users to tasks and or their team members to tasks, but then they go to build out their pages and they're not able to set permissions. They're not able to say, well, I already have my member table. How do I show them only their tasks? Reason being, if that user needs to log in and you need to set up some permissions for them down the road, best practice is to go ahead and create them as a user role or enable your users. So again, I'll say that again. If you have a group of users that potentially need to log in and you need to limit access to that group or a set of groups, like my admins, my managers need to see everything, but my team members only need to see their tasks, then best practice, create that group of users as a user role. So in Knack, you'll just go ahead and quickly enable that, and we can actually start building this out. So we know we have our team members that we want to assign tasks to, and we have our project managers that will be assigned to a project potentially. So I'm going to actually create my project managers, and I will also create my team members. So once that gets added, you'll see I have enabled my users and I'll have 2 user roles set up now. And if I click on these, there's some default fields that Knack adds that are required. It's required to have the name, it's required to have the email, obviously a password field that allows them to log in. Same thing with the user status. You can set users to active or inactive or pending. If they're active, they can log in. If they're not active, they won't be able to log in. And then the user role is just which group do they belong in of the accounts? Which group do they belong in? So these are always going to be here within your user tables, and you can continue to build these out like you would a regular table. So if you needed to capture with your project managers the hire date or some additional information, their phone number, you could do that. You can come in here and continue to build out this table just like a regular table, but it's also going to serve the purpose to help us set up our permissions. And that will make a lot more sense here in a little bit as we build out the pages. So we've got our project managers and we've got our team members set up. So one more thing before we start to move through building out the pages now of what our live app will be. We need to do a few more steps. We have a few more steps here to make sure our project managers are being assigned to the right projects and that our team members are being assigned to the right tasks. So again, that's about connections and again, walking through those statements. If each project can be assigned, or each team member or project manager can be assigned to many projects or many tasks, that many side is where we're going to go and set up that connection field. So a project manager can be assigned to many projects. So I'm going to add my connection field. I'm going to choose my project managers. I'm going to double check this. Yep, that looks good. I'm going to add the connection. I'm going to go to my tasks. I need to assign a task to a team member. So I'm going to add my connection to my team members. Each task connects with one team member. Each team member connects with many tasks. Perfect. We're good. We're set up. Now we're in business. We're getting closer. So there's one more thing, one other step that I do like to do when you're first building out your application. Before you start bringing in all your data, I always say start with test data. Give yourself the test data flexibility. Once you have the structure set up, then you can start bringing in your data if you're in other systems, or if you're able to export your information, if it's in a spreadsheet. It's much easier once you have the basic structure of your application built out, because then you can start mapping your spreadsheets to make sure they're matching what your tables are set up or how they're configured here within Knack. Now, you can certainly start with an import, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Just know that there may be some, as you start to get familiar with Knack and understand how it works, you may have to do some moving pieces around, moving things around. Like, for example, maybe in your project table, you had a first and last name for your project managers, uh, and you don't need that now because now you'll use a connection field. So those will be things that you'll consider at that stage. But so what I'm going to do is I'm going to first add a couple of users so that I can log in and test. So the login credentials that you use to log into your Knack application, this environment here, the builder environment, are different from the user credentials that you'll be using to log into your actual live app. All of those credentials will be managed here under your user roles and accounts. So I'm going to add a test project manager, and I'm going to say row, project manager, and then I'll do just a simple email address so I can test it. So now I've got at least one record in here for me to log in as a manager and test out my application, my live app. And again, it'll make more sense here shortly. We'll do the same thing here with our team members. I'll add Max here. Oh, if I could type today, and we'll say team at test. There we go. Now we've got some test data here for our team member. So again, we just want to throw some test data in here. We can do the same thing if we wanted to with our project table. If we wanted to say project A, promise you I know how to spell, details, start date could be here, due date, just throwing in new. Now you can see row project manager is listed here. So if I had multiple records in here, I would see other project managers or other users on my project manager table. So that is what that lookup field is. So we're seeing that here in real time. Again, it's just a drop down field. If we were to add another user to this table here, we'd see them listed here. We'll run over here to tasks and we'll say task A, description. And then again, we can see project A now because we just created project A, and we see Max team member here. We can add that assignment to them and assign that project to them, or this particular task to them. So now we've got some test data in here. We could start to kind of see things take shape once we start to build out our pages. So I'm going to jump over here to our pages within Knack. Again, we just doing a quick overview. We were on our data tab where we were able to add our fields. You saw here our fields can be edited. We've got some links here. We've got our records tab. This is just going to give us a spreadsheet-like view of all of our data. Take note, you can import your data here. You can export your data out of your application at any time. You could do some batch updating and batch deleting within this platform. You'll see this option here, tasks. Tasks is a way to do automations within your platform without having to touch anything. So let's say you have an upcoming due date on a task and you want to alert the person who's been assigned that task to say, hey, reminder that this is due soon. That is a great opportunity to use a task where you can send an email reminder. We can say, run this daily, check that field. If the date is today, then send an email. So we can run it daily. We can have the time that we want it to start running at. Tasks can not only send emails in this example that I'm sharing, but we can also update records. We can update connected records in other tables. We can insert new records in our connected tables. And then, as I mentioned, we can also send an email. Tasks are available with our Pro plan and above. So if it's something that you think you might need, again, it's super great, a great way to automate things within your platform to kind of be hands off, especially with something like this where you need to trigger a reminder. So we could just say, run this task when the due date is, you'll see all of the options here, but we could say is today. And then you could start to build out what that email says, and you'll have merge fields here that you can add in to pull into your subject header, your message here as well. So a great example of how you could use a task within Knack. You won't see this during the trial if you're trialing with us. So we do have information in our knowledge base if you do want to learn more about them. Uh, so now jumping down to pages, this is where we're at. Knack by default will give you a home page within your application. What does this home page do? It is like a navigation link, but it is also blank. There's nothing on there. So you can always add something to this page, and we call those views. If I were to take a look at my live app, just to see, I'm going to see that it just says Untitled App 2, and it's absolutely blank. So I'm going to exit out of that. So how can we start to kind of show our data on this live app area? So as you notice, I click this link here. It opens up my live app. My live app, it can be found at my Knack personalized URL. So it's got my account slug is what we call it, your account name, and then it's also got your app name. So you see here, my app name is untitled, or my app URL is untitled app 4, even though it says 2 here. That just means in my Knack account, I've got another untitled app uh, buried somewhere in there. But that is my app name or my app URL, portion of my URL. And then I'm on my actual home page. So this is my home page. And I'll find those settings here. That's the part of that page URL is right here. So before we kind of get into that, I can update this and do that from my app settings. I could say, you know what, let me update this because I want to start making this my own. So I'm building my project manager and I'm creating this project manager for our webinar. So this is where I'm updating that URL. As you guys saw previously, it was untitled app 4. And now I'm going to update that link. And then I can add a description and some other information here. But we are on this settings options here. That's where that link took us. Once I hit save settings, my browser's actually going to refresh and update those settings. At least I was hoping it would. Oh, project manager. I already have project manager in my application. So I can't have duplicates. I can't have a duplicate app name or duplicate URL. So just so you know, if you're building more than one app, uh, you might run into that. So you'll have to make sure that your name and URL are unique. All right, now here's the refresh. And now you can see my URL up here starts to update. If I were to jump into my live app here, you can see my live app name updated, my URL up here also updated. Here's the name of my app. I'm on my home page, and here's that Knack personalized portion of my URL. Um, Also take note, you've got some security settings here as well that you might want to take a look at. We've got additional information here about where your data is stored. And if you're looking to utilize maps, that comes with our Pro feature as well. You can set up and integrate with your map settings here with your map provider. You'll also find your live app design settings here. So if you wanted to change the look and feel of your application, these are all going to be under your settings here. I'm not going to dive into these settings here, but we'll encourage you guys to jump in here and customize your app to make it your own. You'll also see user login settings. So if you've got some security settings, like you want to automatically log people out after they've been inactive, you could do some things here. You can make your passwords require more strict passwords, and so you can enable whatever features you need there if you're creating a registration process for your application. So again, all the options here, you'll see we even include e-commerce. If you wanted to use code, CSS, JavaScript, you've got a section here if you wanted to customize even out further within your application. And again, that's all under settings. So jumping back to pages, we now see things are starting to get updated. Now we can start talking about what it is that we're wanting to see and do within this application for our users. This is where we start getting into the workflow of Knack. How do we now trigger a workflow? Our users log in. I want my project managers to see their projects that they've been assigned to, and I want them to be able to assign tasks to team members. So how do you build that out in Knack? Again, we have this home page here by default, but you can add pages by just clicking this plus button here. This home page is a public page denoted by the document that you see there that does not look like, doesn't have a lock. We can add a login page. If you remember at the beginning of this demo, I had to log into our application. So most of you will probably want to have that login page. So you'll be starting from this point here, and then we have a drop-down menu, which just allows you to take a lot of take your navigation or these start pages that we're creating and group them all under one drop-down. So for the purpose of this demo, I'm going to create a new page. We're going to leave this home page here for now um, because I do want to show you what that looks like when you leave the home page there and it's a public page. So we can give all of our users access to this page, or we can say, hey, we're going to limit this to a specific group. So this is where user roles comes into play and why it's important to kind of think through at the very beginning of who needs to log in and do they need to have different level of access than the other groups. So creating those user roles at that step will allow you to come into this portion of it and go, okay, I'm going to create a portal specifically for my project managers. I want them to log in and take X actions. So I'm going to choose my project manager group and click continue. And I'm just going to name this PM dashboard. This is my project manager dashboard for right now. And this is basically me naming that page. So I'm going to add the page. The first thing Knack will have you do is add a view to the page. But before we add a view, I want to kind of give you some context as to where you're at. So we have our home page, which is blank. We had added this new page via our option here, which is our PM dashboard that has a login page. So if I click on that, I navigate to that in my sitemap, I'll see my login page here on the right-hand side. This is a login form. It's a view that we're able to see here on our page. If I click on the PM dashboard, this page is again blank. So again, let's jump into my live app to see what that looks like. Again, it's completely blank. If I navigate to this page here and I say go to live app, I should see my login form for my dashboard. At least I'm hoping I should. There we go. I just need to do a little refresh. If you guys remember, I had to set up credentials so that I now can log in. So now I'm going to log in as a manager. And I'm going to click sign in. And now, as you can see, I am looking at nothing. There's nothing on this page yet, but I had the login form. It let me log in. You're now seeing my two navigation items up here, my home page, which is empty, and my dashboard, which is empty. So if we take a look back here at our Knack application, there's that home page. We logged in, and now we're on this blank page here. So we can delete this home page at this point. I just kind of wanted to point out to you what that looks like within Knack when you leave that home page there, and what you're creating when you click this plus button here. You're creating a navigation or a way to navigate through your application. But now let's talk about our project manager. What do we want them to see? We want them to see a grid of all of their projects. So I'm going to add a view to this page. So views, as it says here, they allow you to showcase your data. It's a great way for you to show your data as well as add data to your database. So we have a couple of view types. We have form views, we have detail views, we have grid views, we have calendar views, reporting views. So there's lots of view types over here for you to choose from. So think about in terms of what is it you want when you think of workflow and what you want your users to see first. So I want them to see a grid, my logged in project manager. I want them to see their projects. Because we set up that relationship early on where we can say, here's all my projects, here's all the projects connected to my logged in project manager. Because if you remember, we added a connection field to our project manager in the project table. We can now set at this stage say, hey, this page knows about who's logged in. and we can now show only that logged in user, only the projects that have been assigned to them. So that's a crucial piece in really understanding how connections work in this sense and setting up those users and the importance of kind of getting that set up in the early stages. And again, if you are struggling with this concept, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're happy to kind of walk through your use case. So again, we have projects. We're going to now show this grid, and we're going to say only show the ones that are connected to my logged in user. I'm going to click continue. Now we can start to add some action links. Do we want them to be able to edit the project? Yes. We can do even further, continue to build out this workflow. Now I want them to click a link to view more details about the project, but I also want them to see some other things on that project page. I want them to see those tasks that are related to the project. So this gets into building parent-child views, or again, a way to see a project and all of the tasks related to it. So I'm going to choose to show a grid of all of the connected tasks to the project. So once I click continue, that's it. I'm going to complete this step here. And now I've got a grid that's been added. By default, Knack has selected this, and you can tell because everything below it, above it, everything's grayed out. So we're in the settings for this grid. We can do some things like go into the source. If you remember in our example, we were able to filter out some things. We could say filter to only show projects that have a status of new, right? We can control what's being seen on that page based on just this multiple choice field that we added that's status. We could do the same thing with a date. If we want to use a date filter, we can do that. So the source is super important. It also tells you what the grid is doing. So if you get into troubleshooting and you want to make sure the view is displaying what it's supposed to, check your source. This grid is displaying project records connected to the logged in project manager. That's what I want. So everything looks good here. And then you've got some default sorting. So if you want to sort by my due date with the newest one, then you can set your sort here. You'll also see some additional settings, like maybe you want to turn on keyword search to allow your users to search the fields that are within the table. You can also search all the fields in the table, just depending upon which group you want to give access, that kind of access to. You can enable record exporting. So if you want users to be able to export information from your table, you can enable that option here. We can turn our table into a spreadsheet where we can now click into each one of these columns or cells and make changes. We can hide empty columns. Again, lots of functionality, lots of things that you can do in the settings of a single view. This is just our grid view. So again, when I say, hey, click on these little icons, see what they do, and see what settings are available to you. And you'll notice as I hover over fields here, I've got another pencil icon here as well. So maybe if I have a status here field and I want to do a display rule where if my status is marked as new, let's show an icon, display an icon, and we can choose whichever icon that we want to choose here. I'll do the peace sign because that just feels fun. And we can change our color here and show whatever we want to show. So again, encourage you to explore these settings here. Before I hit save, I also want to point out when connections are in place, you now have access to fields on other tables. So we're looking at our projects table. Maybe we want to pull in a list of all the tasks that are tied to this particular project. So we can go in and say, hey, add that task field here. It may not be ideal in this situation, but I did want to point that out. With all of your views, you'll have this option to pull in connections or fields related to that table that are within another table. Then you've got your settings, we've already talked about that, the columns, the actions. If you didn't add your edit link at that stage or the view link, you have those options here. You can even give your users a way to delete an item. So again, explore. I'm going to hit save. And now we've kind of got some structure here. And as you can see, the cascading pages, we now added to this blank page, this grid, we have links that take us to these other child pages here to edit this information, as well as view details. And we have here details with tasks associated with the project. So going back, if we wanted to quickly look at this, I know we were clicking on the Go to Live app, but this is really nice and super convenient. We can click on preview, and this is going to show us a preview of our app. As you can see, here's that one record that I added. You notice I can click into this information and make changes. And submits because I made this inline editing here. I've got my search option. I've got a way to export. I've got a form now to edit this information. So you'll see my edit form. I've also got a link to view more details about this record. And you'll see that here's all of my project detail information here in that one task that was assigned to Max. All right there. So once you've had that structure set up, and once you kind of start to understand how Knack's pages and the views work, it becomes quite quick to rapidly build out your workflows or how you want to display your data. And again, uh, going back here, we have our login page. This is going to show all our projects for our logged in project manager. So I'm going to stop preview here. And then we could just rinse and repeat now for our uh, team members if we want the team member to log in and only see tasks that were assigned to them. So for example, we can go into here, we can say login, limit permissions, rinse and repeat, team members, team dashboard, and then, or we could have named that my tasks, but now we can say show a grid of tasks connected to our team member. To continue, we can give them a way to edit. We can give them a way to see more details, and we can add the grid. And that's pretty much it. I can go back to my link and you'll see this next set of pages built out for my team member. If I were to navigate to this page, you'll see I cannot log in. But if I logged in with those credentials I created earlier just to test things out, you'll see that now I'm logged in the team dashboard and I see the one task that's been assigned to Max. So I am going to stop there. I know that there's been a lot of questions going. I'm going to check in with Max to see if there's anything that I can answer or might be worth a demo. Max, let me know if you want to jump on the mic here.
Yeah, sure. There's two questions that I think would be really good to show off. The first is around email notifications. So Giselle or Gazelle was asking around, yeah, how do I essentially send a manager an email when someone finishes a task, and could a user be notified when a task is created for them? Yeah, I'm thinking essentially, yeah, email rules as part of forms.
Perfect. Yeah, that's a great question. So, taking a look back here at our example here, we didn't give ourselves a way to add a project, but to your specific question here around tasks, we have this table, or we have our table, we are able to see the project. We can continue to build out this page. So we can say, let's add a view, let's add a form view that's going to allow us to add a task. So that'll be the first piece. We'll see that our task form starts to populate there. We can click continue, and that'll just add the form to this page and it will sit right below it. I'm a big fan of just putting that behind a menu button and just checking that box. It turns into a menu button, and when I click that button, it will just take me to a new page to add a task. So that's the first step, is first getting that workflow added, getting that form added. I'm going to unselect my menu view here and just let you know you can move your views around on your application to wherever you want. So you'll just hover over these dots here and you'll see that dark black line. We'll drop this button wherever you want. So we have it here. And if I click this here, that little icon, it's going to actually take me to where that form is. You'll also see that I navigated from here to here in my sitemap. But now we can start to do some things within this form. So really great question. Within the form, we can say, hey, let's update some things. We want to add a task. First, we're adding a task that's related to the Pages project. So this source is telling us something that's super helpful for us. This form is inserting a new task record connected to this Pages project. Because I know this, I can now just remove that project field. I don't need it. It's going to set it. Knack will set it in the background. So now we have our team member here, and we'll be able to select our team member. But you'll notice in our form view settings, we have this area called emails. And this is where we can trigger emails based on every time the form submits, or if it's based on a certain status or certain information here, we can set when that trigger is. For the most part, you'll want to set it every time the form submits. You'll say, hey, let's send a custom email. Um, and you can then build out that email from here. This functionality comes with all of our plans. You don't need to be on anything other than just subscribe to a Knack plan, and it's available for you to trigger these emails from a form submission. And you have that from an add form and a form that is either updating a record. So you would just then build out your email here. You'll see that you have options here to CC others. If you want to CC others, you have the ability to use an email field of the connected team member. If you wanted to assign a task to someone from your project team, you just need to make sure that there's a connection field included in that. And you can continue to set up who needs to see that. But this will be where you will set up that email notification for your team members. So hopefully this answers your question here. One of the other areas that we didn't touch upon in the webinar here, but I'd like to spend time with is like our submit rules. Submit rules is what happens when a form gets submitted. You can say, let's redirect and go back to the parent page. Um, or let me redirect to an existing page. Let me take my user elsewhere. So again, it's more about creating that experience for your user that creates less steps for them when they're inside your application. But I'm a big fan of redirecting back to the parent page. And then you'll see things like record rules. Let's say we didn't set the default for status at that earlier stage where we did it at the field level. You could also use a record rule to set the status automatically here as well. So we can say, hey, every time this form submits, set the status to new or set it to in progress. That's just an example, but this is an example of when you might use a record rule. Or maybe you want to capture a date of when a record was updated. Someone goes in, they edit, they use an edit form to make a change. You can say, hey, the last update was made and capture the current date time. So that gets you your timestamp. So all you need is the date time field, and then you can capture that with a record rule. So record rule is super useful. I'm going to hit save. One other thing to kind of share as a pro tip, you'll see at the top here, we've got rules and settings. We can do a fun little rule settings with this page where we display it in a pop-up for our users. So it pops up kind of like we're seeing here in this modal where it's popped up, where they can quickly enter information and then redirect back to where they were at. So if we go back to our app here and we log in as a manager and we go to test out the new functionality that we add, we can now view the details of this project. You can see now our new button that's been added. We can click add the task and we can just create a new task here, set a due date, and then continue on. It's defaulting to new, but then we can now choose our team member and we can hit submit. And now we should see that new task added here to our table. We got just a few more minutes here. Max, I know you said there was two questions. We discussed this one here and hopefully that answered your question. Let us know if not.
Yeah, we got 2 minutes left to quickly go over how to how to see essentially how some project managers could edit tasks or projects, and then others could only see them. So on this one, I was thinking along the lines of using page rules and then two views on a page, one to hide. Although there are other ways of doing this, obviously.
So let me make sure I understood that. You want someone, the project manager, to have edit access to some projects, but not edit access, or not, and have only read-only access to, with some projects.
The other way around. So some project managers have read-only access to all projects, and some project managers have edit access to all projects.
So really the best way to do that is within Knack. Let me stop preview, would be using that, the filtering, so to speak, right? So in this workflow here, we created a project page, and we could call this something like My Projects with this particular one. These are my projects because we know, if we check our source, this is just showing projects connected to the logged in manager. But my recommendation, what I've seen, because I've tried the doing the different page rules to try to show hide. Um, you could definitely try to do something like this here, where you have a list of a grid of projects. Let's see, make sure I have this correct, where you can show all projects here. But then you'll use what we call as a page rule to try to show and hide based on um, a status that you know about. Um, that's one way to do it. Um, but my recommendation would be to create your My Tasks or My Projects, but then have another a login page that you would make for your project managers. And then it would just be all projects. And you can create a workflow where you basically have this all projects. We can easily just kind of go here and just say copy this view to our all projects page. And then we can say we're going to show all projects, not just the projects connected to the logged in user, and then confirm and save. So now we've just created a second view or a second tabbed menu, so to speak, where if we go hit preview, we now see the projects that they've been assigned to that they have edit access for. This one's going to give them edit access, but we can easily just update this to say, hey, we just want this to only be under all projects view only, so we can just remove those options there. Um, we can follow up with you to get you more details on the other workflow. It's just a little tricky. We have to kind of think through what the page rule it would be to trigger hiding, because you could potentially hide a view with what we call page rule. So adding a rule here, we'd have to have something that would allow us to track why we would want to hide this. So page like uh, in this instance, a little bit difficult to do, so we would have to really think through that. But with the example that I just took you through, that should hopefully resolve that. And it looks like we're right at time. I appreciate those of you that stuck around with me. As I started out, there's always so much to cover. Hopefully, we were able to answer your questions. And also, please note, and I know Max has probably shared this here in the chat, we are available to you Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And you can always reach out to our onboarding team at onboarding@knack.com, and we are happy to assist. With that, I will let you go. Again, thank you for sticking with me for a couple minutes here. Alrighty, everyone have a wonderful day.